The Roman Pantheon is not simply a monument from antiquity. It stands as the highest point reached by Roman engineering thought, an architectural embodiment of imperial ideology, and one of the most significant surviving symbols of the transition from paganism to Christianity. Built at the height of Rome's power, the Pantheon has survived nearly 2,000 years in something close to its original form, going on to inspire the architects of the Renaissance, the Baroque, and Neoclassicism in turn. The history of its construction, from Agrippa to Hadrian. The story of the Pantheon begins under the reign of Rome's first emperor, Augustus. Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa, Augustus's closest ally and son-in-law, built the first Pantheon on the Campus Martius between 27 and 25 BCE. That original building was rectangular, faced south, and was dedicated to the patron gods of the Julian family, chiefly Mars and Venus. Disaster struck twice. In 80 CE, Agrippa's temple was badly damaged by a major fire, and the Emperor Domitian had it rebuilt. Then, in 110 CE, under Trajan, lightning struck the building and burned it nearly to the ground a second time. It was the Emperor Hadrian, a passionate devotee of Greek culture, architecture, and philosophy, who undertook a truly radical reconstruction between 118 and 125 CE. Rather than simply restoring the earlier temple, Hadrian chose to completely rethink its concept. The architect behind the project has traditionally been identified as Apollodorus of Damascus, though it is worth noting that modern scholars increasingly question this attribution. No surviving ancient source directly credits Apollodorus with the Pantheon specifically, and the connection may be a later assumption built on his known reputation as Trajan's favored architect rather than solid documentary evidence. Whoever oversaw the project reoriented the building to face north and raised the vast rotunda that survives today. Hadrian showed a genuinely rare mark of humility in the process. Rather than carving his own name across the façade, he left Agrippa's original inscription in place, reading M. Agrippa, L. F. Cos. Tertiv, Facit, Marcus Agrippa, son of Lucius, 3 times consul, built this. Architectural design and an engineering revolution. The Pantheon's central achievement lies in its geometric harmony and in construction materials that were centuries ahead of their time. The entire structure is built around the geometry of a perfect sphere. The dome's internal diameter is exactly equal to the building's internal height, from the floor to the highest point of the ceiling, at 43.3 meters. A perfect sphere could, in principle, be inscribed inside the rotunda, touching the floor and every point of the dome's interior surface at once, a proportion that gives every visitor standing inside an immediate, almost physical sense of balance, spaciousness, and harmony. The Pantheon's dome remains, to this day, the largest unreinforced concrete dome anywhere in the world. To support its staggering weight, estimated at roughly 5,000 tons, Roman engineers relied on a set of genuinely brilliant solutions. The aggregate mixed into the concrete changed as the structure rose. At the base, where walls run up to 6 meters thick, heavy travertine and basalt were used, while higher up the walls and into the dome, that heavy stone gave way progressively to lighter tuff, and finally, near the very top, to feather-like pumice and even crushed walnut shells. The dome itself grows thinner as it rises, tapering from 5.9 meters at its base down to just 1.5 meters around the central opening. Its interior surface is further lightened by coffering, 5 tiers of 28 recessed square panels each, cut into the concrete. Those coffers do more than create a visual illusion of greater height, they physically remove a real and significant amount of mass from the finished structure. At the center of the dome sits the building's only source of light, a circular opening 9 meters across, known as the Oculus, or Eye, of the Pantheon. The Oculus links the temple's interior directly to the sky, to the cosmos, and to the sun itself. Over the course of a single day, a shaft of sunlight sweeps slowly across the walls and floor, turning the entire building into a colossal sundial. When it rains, water falls straight through the opening and onto the floor below. A problem the builders solved by giving the floor an almost imperceptible slope toward the center, where 22 carefully hidden drainage holes carry the water away into Rome's ancient sewer system. The temple's entrance is framed by a grand portico supported on 16 monolithic Corinthian columns. Each column stands 12 meters tall and weighs roughly 60 tons, cut from gray and pink granite quarried in Egypt, floated down the Nile, shipped across the Mediterranean, and finally hauled up the Tiber to reach the Campus Martius. Spiritual and symbolic meaning, from a union of gods to the cosmos. The word Pantheon comes directly from the Greek pan, meaning all, and theos, meaning God. Unlike traditional Greek and Roman temples, where ordinary citizens had limited access and ritual was generally conducted outdoors at an altar, the Pantheon was deliberately designed as an interior space in its own right. Anyone passing through its massive bronze doors found themselves standing at the center of a working model of the universe. Niches set into the rotunda's walls originally held statues of the principal Roman gods, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Neptune, and others. Light from the Oculus swept across each niche in turn over the course of the day and the changing seasons, a moving symbol of the gods' equal standing in their constant presence in the life of the empire. The Pantheon also functioned as a stage for imperial authority. A ruler standing directly beneath the beam of light falling through the Oculus was seen, quite deliberately, as the earthly embodiment of divine will. Becoming a Christian church, a narrow escape from destruction. Most of Rome's pagan temples were abandoned, looted, or stripped for building material after the empire's collapse. The Pantheon escaped that fate through a dramatic change in its legal status. In 609 CE, the Byzantine Emperor Phocas gave the building to Pope Boniface IV. Boniface consecrated it as a Christian church, Santa Maria ad Martyrs, the Church of Saint Mary and the Martyrs, and tradition holds that dozens of cartloads of bones belonging to Christian martyrs were brought from the catacombs of Rome to be reinterred inside it. That conversion to Christian use saved the architectural masterpiece from destruction. The building's core structure remained essentially untouched, even as its pagan statues were gradually replaced with Christian altars and icons. Losses, alterations, and restorations. Despite its remarkable preservation, the Pantheon did suffer some real losses across its 2,000-year history. In 663 CE, the Byzantine Emperor Constans II ordered the gilded bronze roof tile stripped from the outside of the dome and shipped back to Constantinople, a cargo that, according to later historical accounts, was captured by Arab raiders somewhere along the way and never reached its intended destination. In the 17th century, Pope Urban VIII, a member of the Barberini family, had the bronze roof beams removed from the portico. Part of that bronze went into casting cannons for the Castel Sant'Angelo, while another portion was melted down to create Bernini's celebrated baldachin inside St. Peter's Basilica. The episode gave rise to a well-known Roman saying, often attributed to the anonymous satirical voice of the talking statue, Pasquino, quod non fecerunt barbari, fecerunt Barberini. What the barbarians did not do, the Barberini did. Around this same period, two small bell towers were added to either side of the façade. Popular tradition long credited these to Gian Lorenzo Bernini, though modern art historians consider that attribution doubtful, pointing instead to Carlo Maderno or other architects working under Urban VIII's direction as the more likely designers. Whoever was actually responsible, Romans despised the additions on site, feeling they ruined the building's classical silhouette, and nicknamed them the donkey's ears. They were finally removed in 1883, restoring the façade to something closer to its ancient profile. The Pantheon as a national necropolis. Beginning in the Renaissance, the Pantheon became a burial place for celebrated figures in the arts, and later, for the monarchs of unified Italy. The painter Raphael, who died in 1520, was buried inside the Pantheon at his own request. His sarcophagus carries a Latin epitaph composed by the humanist scholar and Cardinal Pietro Bembo, its closing line often rendered in English as, "Here lies Raphael, by whom nature herself feared to be conquered while he lived, and, when he died, feared to die alongside him." The painters Annibale Carracci and Taddeo Zuccari also rest here, along with the architect Baldassare Peruzzi and the celebrated composer and violinist Arcangelo Corelli. After Italian unification in the 19th century, the Pantheon took on a new role as a royal mausoleum for the newly unified nation. Victor Emmanuel II, the first king of a united Italy, is buried here, alongside Umberto I, the second king, assassinated in 1900, and Queen Margherita of Savoy, Umberto's wife. Influence on world architecture. The Pantheon became the essential architectural textbook for Europe and, later, the New World. Its forms were studied, reinterpreted, and directly quoted for centuries afterward. Filippo Brunelleschi studied the Pantheon's dome construction in close detail while designing his own famous dome for the Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore in Florence. Michelangelo, who reportedly described the Pantheon's dome as the work of angels rather than of men, drew on its proportions while designing the dome of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Across the 18th and 19th centuries, the Pantheon silhouette became a standard reference point for monumental public architecture throughout the neoclassical world, giving rise to its own namesakes in Paris and London, among other capitals. In the United States, Thomas Jefferson drew direct inspiration from the Pantheon for the rotunda at the University of Virginia and for his own estate at Monticello, a form that would later shape both the Jefferson Memorial and the United States Capitol in Washington. The Pantheon remains a genuinely rare example of human ingenuity outlasting time itself. Having stood for nearly 2,000 years through the fall of empires, fires, floods, and a complete change of religion, it continues to perform the same essential function it always has, connecting an ordinary human being with something vast and enduring.